Today, we're diving into a really powerful framework, one that's designed to heal some of the most complex and difficult family dynamics out there. It's called therapeutic parenting. And honestly, it's a profound shift in how we think about caregiving, about connection, and about recovery. So let's get right into what that actually means. To really get to the heart of this, we have to start with one big fundamental question. What if all those behaviors that frustrate us the most, the outbursts, the shutting down, the defiance, what if that's not just a kid acting out? What if it's their only way of communicating a really deep unmet need or a past trauma? Just shifting your perspective to that one idea, well, that's the key that unlocks everything else we're going to talk about.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll nail down what therapeutic parenting actually is. Then, we'll get practical and look at a toolkit called the PACE model. From there, we'll see how these ideas can be applied to heal some really deep parent-child rifts. And finally, and this is super important, we're going to tackle a major controversy in this field that you absolutely need to be aware of. So first up, what exactly is therapeutic parenting? Well, at its core, it is a complete paradigm shift. It's about moving away from all those traditional ideas about control and punishment and moving towards something much, much deeper. This isn't your average parenting strategy. It's a specialized, really intentional approach built specifically for children who have been through trauma or instability. Think of kids in the foster care system or who have been adopted. The goal here isn't just to manage behavior. No, the goal is to build a relationship so secure, so safe, that the relationship itself becomes the foundation for healing and emotional restoration.
And here's where you can really see the difference. Let's put them side by side. Conventional parenting, it's often focused on behavior management, right? Using rewards and punishments to get a kid to comply. Therapeutic parenting completely flips that script. Instead of asking, how do I stop this behavior? The question becomes, what is this behavior communicating? The goal totally shifts from just getting obedience to creating genuine healing and building trust.
And listen, this isn't just some feel-good philosophy. It's grounded in some really solid psychological principles. First up is attachment theory, the core idea that a secure parent-child bond is the actual vehicle for healing. Second, it's trauma-informed. It recognizes that a child's survival brain might be running the show, causing them to react to threats that aren't even there anymore. And finally, all of this is held together by this beautiful balance of high structure, like predictable routines and boundaries, and high nurture, which together create that essential feeling of safety. Okay, so that's the theory, but how do you actually do it? What does it look like in the heat of the moment? That brings us to the practical, hands-on toolkit for this approach, the PACE model. Now, the first thing you have to understand is that PACE is not a script. It's not a list of things to say. It's described as a way of being. It's a whole mindset that shapes how a parent thinks, feels, and communicates, all to build that solid foundation of security for their child. These 4 pillars, PAC, they all work together to create connection. So P is for playfulness, using a light tone, a little humor, to diffuse tension and just show that the relationship is bigger than the problem. Then comes A for acceptance. This means validating the child's emotion, not necessarily the behavior, but the feeling behind it. From there, you lead with C, curiosity. Instead of an accusatory, why did you do that, you ask, I wonder what was going on for you just then. And it all culminates in E, empathy, showing the child you can truly feel with them so they know deep down they are not alone in this. So when a child is really dysregulated, when they're having a hard time, there's a very clear sequence to follow. Number 1, the parent has to regulate themselves. You can't co-regulate with a child if you're not calm yourself. Step 2, you relate. You connect with them using that PACE model. And only then, step 3, can you try to reason with them or introduce a boundary. Trying to lecture a dysregulated child is a recipe for disaster. And finally, you always repair the connection afterward to reassure them that you're solid, that the relationship is safe.
And this brings us to such a crucial point. This work is emotionally draining. I mean, being that constant, calm, regulated presence, it can lead to serious burnout. That's why self-care isn't a luxury in this framework. It's an absolute necessity. It really is the oxygen mask principle. You have to put your own on first before you can effectively help your child. Now, let's take this framework and apply it to one of the most painful and complex situations a family can go through. What happens when a parent-child bond is intentionally broken, a dynamic that's often called parental alienation? Okay, we have to be incredibly careful here because making a distinction is absolutely critical. Parental alienation describes when one parent manipulates a child into rejecting the other parent based on false or really exaggerated claims. This is completely different from what's called justified estrangement, where a child pulls away because of actual abuse or neglect. Confusing the two can be incredibly dangerous because forcing a child back into an abusive situation is the exact opposite of healing. For those specific cases identified as alienation, a specialized intervention called reunification therapy is sometimes used. And the goal isn't just to force contact. A good program aims to methodically and carefully rebuild a relationship based on that foundation of trust and emotional safety.
And this is where it all connects. The engine of successful reunification therapy is coaching that rejected parent to use the exact same principles we've just been talking about. They learn how to approach their child with pace, with that playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy to create the safety the child needs to finally let their guard down. However, and this is a huge however, this entire area is filled with intense debate and some really serious ethical dangers, and we have to address this head on. It is so important to understand that the very concept of parental alienation is not universally accepted. It is not a formal diagnosis in the DSM-5, the Big Book of Psychiatric Diagnoses. Critics argue that it often functions more as a legal strategy than a clinical one, and they warn that it can be misused in court to dismiss and silence children who are trying to report real abuse. And this concern just gets amplified when you hear reports about so-called reunification camps. These programs are the philosophical opposite of everything therapeutic parenting stands for. Instead of creating safety, they reportedly use tactics like taking off bedroom doors, forcing kids to listen to horrible recordings, and using threats to force compliance. This doesn't heal trauma. It actually risks replicating it. So this brings us to a very clear ethical line in the sand. For any reunification effort to even be considered therapeutic, it has to be voluntary. It must be child-centered, move at the child's pace, and prioritize their emotional and physical safety, that felt safety, above everything else. True healing can never, ever be forced. Which leaves us with this one final thought. Therapeutic parenting, whether you're using it for everyday challenges or for the deepest relational wounds, it offers a path away from control and toward connection. It gives us the tools for healing, but in the end, it really asks a powerful question. What becomes possible when a family is given the chance to rewrite its own story, chapter by chapter, with safety, empathy, and understanding as its guide?